Hello everybody, welcome to another video of one of my art projects. In late January this year, I had the opportunity to paint live at an art conference. And this idea came to mind of a raven that was flying, but the raven was entangled with all of these different things that were keeping it from flying. And the idea behind it was that ravens historically, biblically, are heralds. They kind of get a rap of bringing kind of bad news to people, but that's partly because of the story of the flood, right? Because they leave and they never come back. But they're actually quite loyal, very family-oriented birds, and they have this idea that when they show up, they bring news. And so the thought process behind that was that this ravens, creatives, in connection to this painting at this conference, is that creatives are the heralds of the day. We really communicate through creativity in our world, creative video, whether it's video or music or different creative ideas in marketing, in art. Those are the visual and the audio testimonies of what is happening in culture. They kind of set the stage. They tell a story of culture. They bring the news. They tell us what's going on. And so this raven represents this idea of creativity. But the question then beckons is, what are the things that keep creatives from using their voice, from sharing, from speaking to those around them, from being the heralds of the day? What is the news that they're bringing, and what is holding them back? Whether it's relational turmoil or emotional turmoil, physical turmoil. What are the issues in your heart that keep you bound? And so I set out to paint this at this conference live during a music set at the beginning. Felt really inspired. I actually painted the painting in like 25 minutes on stage. And so I sat down. At the end of the conference, I had a gentleman come up and we spoke, and I really felt like I was supposed to give the painting to him. And so I gave it to him, and I wasn't actually able to take any pictures of it. I have a really bad video of it. And so I wanted to recreate the idea. And so that's what you're watching right now. So I'm using some Micron, they're pen and ink. They're actually Faber-Castell waterproof black ink pens. I'm using Black Magic ink that is waterproof as well. The base of this canvas was coated with gesso, and then I painted all around the raven with just a white acrylic paint. And so I'm using various techniques, some cross-hatching, directional line work with both the pens, and this one actually that you hear is a wide brush pen. So I'm using a brush pen and then some fine tip pens. And then I come back in with a paintbrush and ink. So everything is ink in this spot. And one of the things that really helps with ink drawing is in movement, is your line direction tells your eye where to go. So especially with feathers, you can find these ways of using lines to tell people where to look, to inform their mind with what it is that you're drawing. And so pen and ink has a really powerful dynamic to do that. If you look on the black, you can see there's some texture showing through. What I did is I actually overcoated my gesso so that when it dried, it cracked and got some deep cracks in it, and then I'm used those cracks to my advantage. So it creates a really exciting texture in the painting. It adds, over the feather work, it just adds a cool effect to it, makes it feel a little bit old. And gives your eye some more, stimulus to look at. So, again, just laying in some feathers. When we get to the end of this, you'll see that I actually bring in some acrylic markers to go over the top to add some highlights back in. Actually, they're acrylic paint markers. and those go right over the top. And then I work in some other acrylics with paintbrush. So as I'm going, I will always flip my canvas quite a bit, just to keep from any risk of smearing, or also helping with glare, because when things are shiny, sometimes you can't tell how much is filled in. I did spend quite a bit of time researching, looking at feathers, looking at feather placement, line direction, those kinds of things, just to ensure that the raven has a sense of anatomy that is correct. Obviously never perfect, but correct to the sense that it's not distracting. So I switched here from the pen to the paintbrush. And sometimes I do that if I'm trying to lay in faster, or a paintbrush will tend to have more of an organic stroke to it than a pen, because a pen's going to have a consistent width, whereas a paintbrush has flex. So you get a little more of an organic nature to it. And I actually used the pen on the first wing, and then on the second one I shifted gears and focused more on painting with the paintbrush. But here I am, I switched back to a pen. So you can actually see the difference in the line weight, how it goes on. It just feels more like a marker, obviously, than the paintbrush. So I switched back and forth in the video just because I wanted to give an example of how you can achieve a similar feeling with the same tool. Again, just a little bit different process. So one thing to note is with the brush ink pens, they tend to be a little more transparent. So there's a lot of spots on here that as they dry, I go back over them. I'll go back over them with a paintbrush. I'll go back over them with a second coat of ink, just to get everything a little bit darker. The positioning on this painting was actually really important. I wanted to fill the canvas, but not overly fill it. Like, I wanted a little bit of tension on the corners, on the edges, so it wasn't like a big empty white space only, but almost like this raven is trying to get out of this space. So I brought his wings close to the edge, obviously leaving a little bit of margin. It's always important, I think, to have a little bit of margin when you're doing something that does have negative space around it. It helps to enclose the story, unless you're really wanting an unknown to be outside of the canvas. So one thing to note on feather work, like I said earlier, is just direction matters. I like to emphasize the fact that you always can use lines to give direction, and the eye just will subconsciously follow that direction. So in pen and ink, it's a really great tool, the line work, to give shape, to give form. Going back to what I said earlier, if you on the zoom in here, you can kind of see the different shades of black. That can work to your advantage, but it can also be a distraction. Since these are feathers and there was tension here, I didn't recoat the entire raven. I just wanted to have some texture, some tension in there. So, and that was not as critical in this painting, because conceptually I'm wanting to show kind of some ruffled feathers, some distress, and not that perfect anatomy. So here I am with the acrylic marker, just adding more highlights over the top. Once the ink is dry, you can be pretty liberal with the acrylic markers. You can actually reactivate the ink even though it's waterproof. I don't quite know why that happens with the acrylic markers, so you really want to have a lot of flow. So here I am with acrylic markers, weaving in this concept of entanglement. So this raven's obviously broken free, but he's got these different things that are wrapped around him that are keeping him from being able to be the herald that he needs to be. The deeper concept of this, though, is that part of what makes art, part of what makes creativity so beautiful is this tension that sometimes what we think is holding us back actually make the story more dynamic. It actually adds a humanity to a story that allows the creativity to be relatable to other people. Sometimes if things are just always perfect and always happy, there's no suffering, there's, a good movie, for example, has these critical moments of suffering, of failure, of, you know, somebody going to make it? Are they going to come through? Is the person who needs to, you know, is the main character, are they able to be victorious, or do they fail? I went around the toothbrush here and I splattered some ink on this. I wanted to, again, make it look a little bit like stuff's coming off of him, a little bit stressful, right? Like he's just trying to break out of this. So with the markers, I wanted to also intertwine it in the feathers, so you can see I'm not carrying these markers all the way over. So he's not like perfectly wrapped in it, he's entangled in it. And I'm going back, I'll go back in and find some spots and add some shadow along the strings and the different things that have entangled, just in order to give them some depth. This is kind of a merger of a few types of work that I do. I love communicating graphically. I love fine art. I love pen and ink. And so I was trying to tell a story here. So this is a little less on the all natural wildlife art side per se. This is more on, hey, I have something to say here. So the question is, what is keeping you from speaking? What is keeping you from flying? What are the entanglements, the complications in your life that are keeping you from flying? And are they in fact keeping you, or is that part of the story that you need to tell in your own life, in your own story? What are the things that you're entangled with that may actually be part of your story that enables other people to be free from the same things? So I hope you enjoyed this. And stay tuned for some more. I'd love if you'd visit my YouTube channel, or I have more work on my website. Thank you so much.